Glad to be here.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to admit people at the same time. We'll synchronize this thing in a minute. So Friday Night Chats is brought to you by Dr. Karen Love and hosted by the Love Family Christian Foundation, serving Christ Church and the community. And so we've known David for a long time. My husband and I, Dr. Michael Love, we've known David for some time, and we've talked about some strategies and what we can do to improve the health and well-being of the communities. Let me tell you a little bit about David's background and to give you a backdrop and a context of where this discussion is going. David is the executive director of Transform Rockford, and David had actually did a little vetting so that I can understand Transform Rockford. It sounds so wonderful. So how can we engage? Transform Rockford is a private organization based in Illinois that was founded in 2014. As of 2019, they had $338,450 in revenue, 869,245 in assets. What drives the quality of life in the neighborhood, our workforce, and the future of our economy, so drives the future of the community in and of itself. I got that quote from David. Okay, the purpose of Transform Rockford is to become a top 25 community by 2025 with several key areas for improvement, such as in education, families and neighborhoods, safety, physical infrastructure, unity, pride, culture, and the quality of life. Transform Rockford is a community-driven grassroots movement with the goal of rallying and guiding our residents to see the Rockford region in a new light. Taking community members, ideations, dreams, improving the social and economic well-being of the region, and plugging it into a tangible community transformation place where residents can get inspired, engage, and be proud of where they live. Now, to give you a little backdrop of why this happened and the context of it, Rockford was rated in 2013. It was in the top 10 for the most miserable places to live in the cities, in terms of city, yes. So, I mean, you don't want that ranking at all. So this private group, this grassroots group has come together and they want to affect change in a big way. So welcome, David.
Well, thank you, Dr. Love. Yes, that ranking is what propelled us as a movement. No one wants that status, and we don't want any community to really have that status. And so I'm glad to be with all of you tonight. Looking forward to this conversation. Speaking about placemaking and really just how the power of collaboration, and this type of collaboration requires a lot of agility and basically, constantly adjusting to what's happening. So where we were in 2014 is now where we are today, and in good respects. And then how do we continue to achieve our mission towards top 25 by 2025? So Dr. Love, I'll continue on if
Sure, I'd like for you to share your stories, and then I have, about 20, 25 questions for you. Let's just have a conversation.
All right.
So you can continue, absolutely.
So my story is I am native to Rockford, Illinois. This is where I was born and raised, and I've been really passionate about this community. Didn't see myself working here professionally, but I had an opportunity in 2006 to return back to Rockford to become a land planner. And that's what actually drove me to get into urban planning in the first place. I started off in architecture at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and really just wanted to see how could I contribute to communities being better, and every neighborhood everywhere within our city, but within any community, right? How do we really create thriving places? And so that's what propelled me to switch out of architecture within the first 3 weeks of being in the architecture program and moved into urban planning. It was because of being introduced to a more macro scale for change. And since then, I haven't looked back. I did work in the Chicago suburbs for a little bit before coming back to Rockford, and ever since 2006, I've been here practicing in the private sector as an urban planner. And then in 2013, I shifted into I became the city planner for Rockford, and really thought that I would stay in that role for a long time. And as you said, this grassroots movement was started in 2013, and I was volunteering at that time. And then over the course of time, there was an opportunity to really, as this movement grew, it needed staffing. And so I was asked if I would join the team as a project director. And so actually, over 5 years ago, that's where I joined and became the executive director nearly 3 years ago.
David, now, since the city was rated in the top 10 sector of the most miserable place to live, what were some of the key indicators?
So, yeah, in 2013, Forbes magazine, like many magazines, USA Today, Forbes, there's quite a few, Money magazine, do various rankings on communities, and we've always been on those ranks in different ways. What was unique about 2013 is Forbes came out with a ranking. They have quite a few ranks. They evaluate communities for in looking at the economy of the place, the job opportunities, quality of life, income, safety, crime. All various factors. And so through their measures, we ended up being number 3 on the list of most miserable places to live. It also factored in, those measures also factored in people's own, they surveyed, right? So they did some general surveying of the population throughout the United States. And so all of that factored into us landing on the list, and it surprised us. It surprised everyone that Forbes had this ranking system, and then we find ourselves on number 3. Uh, so that was a turning point for our community in many ways. And it was a very pivotal moment for us because the data was there and it showed who we are. And for some were said, yeah, this is my lived experience. It is a very miserable place to live. And many people wanted to leave. And at the same time, there were individuals who were saying, this is a great place to live. And so that dichotomy of experience, I think that's endemic to a lot of cities where you can be in a community where you're thriving and someone else is not, or vice versa, right? And so that really became foundational. So those measures really propelled us to say, what are the brutal facts? We call it then, and we still kind of refer to it internally. That was the galvanizing moment for the community to say, okay, regardless of what you think, feel, or have experienced, these are the brutal facts. You can't hide behind the data, right? And this is what it is. And that became the moment by which we put ourselves on this path of transformation.
Was education also ranked? Because I didn't see that in the report at all. That
Yes, yeah,
population as well?
education, safety, economy were the top 3, but they also had other factors as well.
So what's the vision for Transform Rockford on a
So the
macro scale and then the micro scale of the upcoming initiatives for 2021?
So the vision is to be a top 25 community by 2025. It was, and that vision statement, just to take a moment, was crafted by close to 3,500 people throughout the Rockford region. So we started as a grassroots movement of individuals who basically said enough is enough, and what are we going to do about it? And there was no staff at the time, and it was all volunteer led, uh, facilitating of roughly 70 community engagement sessions throughout the region, and these took place from uh, church basements, community centers, country clubs, you name it. It was for the first time Rockford said, not only are we don't need to come up with another plan. What we need is broader engagement and civic engagement in the transformation of this place. And so that vision statement of being top 25 emerged through the dialogue, through people saying, we've got to have a big goal that can galvanize and draw many people to say, yes, we could actually do it, and then figure out how to get there. So that vision remains true today, and it's what keeps us on course. And then over time, an organization was built to support the implementation of this vision, Transform Rockford. And so we are measuring our progress and continuing to implement several initiatives throughout the entire region.
No, I was wondering about the vision statement, but because my next question is this a sustainable vision, um, or has it shifted because of
Can't hear you
COVID-19 and some
clearly.
of the, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now. Your
Okay,
voice was too low to hear. Yeah.
too low again. You guys wore me out today. All right. So is it a sustainable vision, or has the vision shifted because of COVID-19 and some of the racial unrest that has gone on throughout the United States?
Well, at its core, our vision is very sustainable. You know, it's top 25 by 2025. That's the core of the vision. And so that part, and I think that is what's so important about our mission, our vision is it it's still sustainable even in light of all the things that we have experienced. We started in the midst of coming out of the previous economic downturn. And then riding the wave of progress and growth, and then COVID and social unrest. And so the vision, the testing of the vision still remains strong. But there's room for modifying the vision. In fact, we actually just came out in November. We went through a process to evaluate the strength of the vision statement and does it need to be changed. And so there are some recommendations, and if I get down the trail here too fast, just let me know. But internal to our organization, we have a special team that I call, it's the red team. And that team is they constantly look at everything that we're doing, and they are there to provide a contrarian view, basically to say, hey, you're missing something. And so I listened to that team, and we listened to that team, and what the team said is, this is a very solid vision, and yet it still needs some work now 5 years later. And so they came forward some recommendations. And so true to our processes, we're going to roll those out to the broader community and ask for residents to say, this is what we think are the missing components to this vision statement in our set of shared values. What do you think?
Okay, very good, very good. Now, this is a private foundation, so there's a fundraising aspect that's involved. Everybody loves that. And so my question is to you, has COVID-19 changed the way you do business? In terms of stakeholders, fundraising, donor relations, investor relations, and grant approvals.
Well, it has affected us, but it probably hasn't affected us as it could have without the founders of the movement. When this was set, it was envisioned that this needed to be uh, more than just a 1, 2, 3 year initiative, that it had to have a 10 and maybe 15-year, 20-year life to it. And so it was well funded from the outset, from the as a foundation from private funders. And so we've been able to operate and navigate even through these times, with a solid financial base. Now, it has impacted in terms of new investors. Like any other organization, it's just been a tough time for anyone who was thinking about contributing to Transform Rockford, being an investor, have had to pull back and say, we're going to look at and see how things are as we get into 2021. And what we're finding is that as we're now in 2021, many private funders are ready to have that conversation again. So that's encouraging. But 2020 was it was a year where we just assumed at the outset, when the pandemic hit in the middle of March, that we were not going to raise new dollars in 2020.
Has the performance metrics changed because of the funding? So you have a metric for success, right?
Right.
Gearing towards success in 2025. So has that changed in any way because of the current conditions?
Well, our indicators are still the same as they were pre-COVID, and what has changed is the tactics, right? So our measures didn't need changing, but we had to shift our tactics, our strategies and tactics, I call them. And the tactics are saying, we know that we were experiencing significant amount of capital investment across education, healthcare, across, we are ranked as one of, just recently last week, ranked as one of the best cities for new home buyers. The only city in Illinois with that rank, right? So we have conditions that tell us that we were already on the upswing pre-COVID. And what 2020 did is actually, what we're discovering is that because of the progress before 2020, everywhere where we were progressing, we're doing very well. But areas where we were either stagnant or declining, that's where we had to change gears. So entrenched generational poverty is an example of a metric where, when you dive deep and look at, particularly in the Black community, that metric although it moved pre-COVID, it hasn't moved as fast as other populations, right? So that's one that is concerning, and that one has also propelled some of our strategies that we're doing just right now in terms of going after generational poverty.
Now, I have graduate students and doctoral students, so I want to ask you this question. What is your leadership style?
Ooh. I'd be curious what my staff team says. I try. I don't get this right all the time, but I believe in the value of empower and release. Empower and release. And so I always want to, especially coming into the role of executive director, I feel like my role is to empower you to be able to do what you do best to help us achieve our mission. And if I can do that, one, it prevents bureaucracy. And but it really, that's where the engagement is. I mean, people come to life when they're empowered, and so that's what my style is. And at the same time, with empower and release comes accountability. And so it isn't you run free, but it's, you are empowered. You're resourced and go. And these are the targets that we're trying to achieve. And so, how are we doing? And if we need to course correct, let's have that conversation. Let's take on the tough conversations and not hide from it, and not to be afraid of having those conversations. Fear, to not have fear, right? And really not having. I don't believe in fear-based leadership, and I because it doesn't really get you to a healthy culture, and it really doesn't get you any closer to your vision, at least in my opinion.
Amen. Thank you. Here's another question. What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
Well, this job didn't exist when I some 20 years ago, and I actually, if someone had told me that I would be in this role doing this kind of work, I would have been saying, "Are you kidding me?" And if they had told me that to change a community would require a level of leadership that is a mix of empowering, accountability, um, patience, and yet resolve to achieve, like all of that mixed in one role in one organization, I would have just kind of looked and went, oh, okay, either that's not for me, or wow, that seems like a lot. So I think that's, yeah, it's, one probably would not have, if I had heard it then, I kind of probably wouldn't have paid attention to it. But I also kind of would have liked to have known that, this is what would be needed for me to have a successful career.
Now, David, your background is in ministry, architecture, and urban planning.
Correct.
Now, Transform Rockford. So, how do you put that together? If you had to choose, I don't want to say, you do the vegetable, the dog, the few like that. But if you had to choose a particular narrative to share with someone those things that are important to you, how would you craft that narrative based on your experiences?
I have to say, at the core, in every environment that I have been in, private sector, public sector, and now in the social impact or nonprofit sector, I'm really thankful that I have had my core, my compass to guide me through, and I'm constantly reiterating, clarity around my personal mission, my personal set of values and beliefs. And I'm constantly looking at, I have my own, these are my objectives. And so every year I'm looking at my personal, how I'm equipped, and what I say is how God has wired me. I always want to know, what am I doing that's actually contributing, and making sure that I'm aligned. And so I think it's very important for having that compass, because that's really key to navigating. I look back at my journey, and I've had several people say that everything that I've done prior to Transform Rockford was a buildup to this role. And so that progression is something that I'd say, never take it for granted, that, where I look where I started and where I'm at now, everything has been it's stacked. It's been a progression. Nothing's been of waste. Now, not every experience has been joyful, but it has not been of waste. I can't tell you how much that I learned in the first 6 months of my first job after grad school is so critical in my engagement in the business community, when we're looking at physical development projects. And so, although I'm not actively doing that in my day-to-day work, but that helps me to have I can have that conversation. When someone says, let's evaluate the pro forma, what's going to be the return on investment? How do we know that, in capital stack, and what are the funding sources, right? All of that comes from, it's been in every job that I've had, but it was one of my first job, entry level job. Those are the basics that I'm still using today.
With organizational leadership, one thing that has really challenged me is not having that data component to the program, and whether it's data analytics or budgeting or some type of quantitative component to it, because I think it's very important for leaders to have the ability to read a P&L, right? So that they can craft that narrative. And that has really been just, yes, we need that component. It's not just, the MBA is the quantitative and the MAOL is the qualitative. So, you need both. You really need both aspects of that. So how do you develop that narrative with that quantitative support so that you can interpret the data and create that narrative for the organization to understand the health of the organization? Mm-hmm. So with you in architecture and urban planning, where did that quantitative component come in?
Well, it came in when I was in the private sector, practicing as a planner, but really, so real estate development is really where I started to have to get into that quantifiable, what are the metrics? What's going to allow this project to perform? But then also, part of my narrative, when I was with a local firm here in Rockford between 2008 and 2013, that was right at this start of the last economic downturn. And so my role changed in that job immediately. I was recruited in to be the senior planner, but then because of the economic downturn and how fast it was, my role shifted within the first year. I came alongside our CEO, and I ended up becoming a part of business development. And so I had to quickly learn QuickBooks and understand, the balance sheet and what does it look like in, knowing that our highest profit year was in '08, and now for at least 2 to 3 years, we're in a rapid decline, and we have a staff of this size, and we have a portfolio of projects that is getting smaller and smaller, and this is what we have in our reserves. That's a whole lot of information to say, basically, can we survive?
Yeah.
And then not only can we survive, then can we thrive? And if we can thrive, what is that going to look like? And so, yeah, it's important to have both, when you talk about leadership style, and then also going in order to lead an organization, you got to understand the bottom line.
Now, if you could step in my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't ask?
I don't know. What's my favorite book? I don't. Yeah, I would say, I think right now more than ever, we need, the question I would ask is, what does it look like for the next generation in leadership?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, and I would answer it, that the next generation of leadership, all of you who I'm just getting to know for a brief moment in your journey, you are so crucial to the future. All of us have a role, but particularly where we find ourselves here, not only within the United States, but globally, we need leaders who will lead, and will lead from a place of empowerment, and lead from a place of everyone matters. And so you are as difficult as this time is across the entire world, it's actually the best opportunity for you to step in your leadership. So I go back to, your compass, and if you don't, figure it out. If you don't know what your values and beliefs are, go on that journey to start, because that's going to be crucial, and we need it, and we need you. And so, yeah, that'd be the question.
That would be the question. Excellent, excellent. I have another question here. I am asked to ask you about any leadership related challenges you are faced with or you have been faced with, and how did you solve those particular issues?
Well, tangibly, I think it's February 5th, and I think back to last February, and I had just hired a new staff person, so I'm expanding the staff. We're ready to go for for 2020, and not knowing that we were going to not only have a pandemic, and the rapid decline, economic downturn, and then the civic and social unrest, and all the issues of race, class, and gender that have it's now all, it's always been around us, but all of these factors have really challenged my personal leadership in terms of how am I showing up in this space personally, and to be able to be a confident Black male and being a part of the change, knowing that I'm in an environment that not everyone sees me of value, right? But yet to stay in the room, remain engaged, and lead. I've had to actually lean into my leadership more than ever, I will also say too, I will never forget when we left our office, it was the middle of March. And I told our team, I said, I don't know if I'm going to call everyone in next week or not, but stay tuned. That was right before, I mean, really, we're understanding where we're at with the pandemic. And then when I made the call Sunday night that we're shutting the office down and basically that was everyone knew that we were activating our remote working system. It was I had no idea if it was going to truly work because we had never really tested it to the degree that we had to. And that Monday, we had issues with Zoom because everybody's now getting on Zoom. And volunteer teams, we have, 500, close to 500 volunteers on different projects throughout the community. So how are we going to shift all of them to remote? And the timing of that, so really trying to, so that crisis leadership. And so we got through the first week and I got to Friday and I was exhausted and I'm going, I don't think this is just gonna, I said we will probably all return back to the office about mid-April, but then I had this sense that this is not looking good. And that Saturday morning, I had been registered to participate in a crisis leadership experience with leaders across the world. And it was the moment that truly changed me because I went from fear and uncertainty to, well, I'm still uncertain, but I can confidently lead our team. And so I would just answer that question is that crisis leadership has really been tested for me, and a lot of the theory and systems and metrics, right? And then to actually pivot an entire organization to operate through a pandemic has been the biggest test of my life to date.
Yeah, we found that out through ministry as well, and with the nonprofit, because we had to put everything online. And what we had about from Wednesday to Sunday to convert everything. Yeah, it was amazing. So I have additional questions for you. What are the top three initiatives that you're working on as part of achieving the 2025 goal? And I think we talked about the metrics before, but it says, what are the metrics that you use to select them?
Okay. Yeah. I'll actually, if I can for a moment, I'll pull up my PowerPoint and share just so you can see, get some insight. Oh, actually, no, I don't think I can share.
You can
That's okay.
if you want to, and I can get it up. I can put it up for you.
You're cutting out, Dr. Gay.
Oh, okay. So David, if you want to send it to me,
Okay.
I'll download it and post it as you're talking.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We've been going through this all day. We're used to it now.
Yeah.
So 1 second. Please hold.
And while I'm sending this to you, can you repeat the first question?
Okay, so let's get back to it. Okay. The first question was, oh, wait, so, wow, it's really populating now. What are the three initiatives that you are working on as part of achieving the top 25 goal, 2025 goal, and what are the metrics?
Look, so one is when we get the scorecard up, it'll make sense. So one is around neighborhoods. So it's called Great Neighborhoods, and it utilizes asset-based community development model to see that all neighborhoods are thriving and whatever those barriers are for a neighborhood to thrive in terms of a place to live, a place for economic opportunity. We have an entire initiative focused on neighborhood revitalization. The second highest priority is what we call innovation ecosystem. So we, as a part of this top 25 vision, is that we want to be a hub of innovative companies and entrepreneurs. And so for that to happen, it requires both mentoring, coaching, access to capital. There's a whole lot of components to basically make this a place where you can start and scale your business. And so we've been working actually through COVID more aggressively than we've ever been around our innovation ecosystem here. And then, let's see, we've had quite a few initiatives. The third, probably next priority falls in the space of kindergarten readiness. And so we have created a whole initiative called Ready to Learn, and it gets at the first 1,100 days of a child's life. And those first 1,100 days of a child's life are very critical for development. And so what we're doing is typically most communities look at third grade reading as the metric for success for students. And that is a key metric, but that's really a lag. What the leading side of it is how are students coming into kindergarten, and and as you continue to go upstream, the science is now caught up. We partnered with the Erickson Institute on this, and it became so clear that the first 1,100 days of a child's life and the environment that they're in, both the house, but also the neighborhood, is a huge factor into their growth. And so we want to ensure that we are creating places pre-kindergarten for students to grow and develop. And so we're looking particularly at the neighborhood component. So that's three. There's others. We have an initiative another one that's near and dear to our community that's focused on eliminating domestic violence. And that initiative has really taken off, and it's on its own. And so I hope I'm giving you a variety of there's a lot of initiatives that get at the social and economic conditions.
Very good. So I'll share.
Come closer, Dr. K.
Okay, sorry. All right. Can you see the PowerPoint slides, placement movement? Okay, very good.
Yes, so if you go down to slide 8.
Okay.
Here's what you'll see. So we built this community scorecard 2 years ago, and we'll be releasing the latest set of data actually in a month. So I encourage you to go to transformrockford.org and you'll see this live. It's a live scorecard that we're pulling in from credible data sources that are telling us about how we're doing towards becoming a top 25 community, and then also how we so our own progress here locally, but then also how that compares to 100 other communities throughout the United States. So we can now say how we're doing compared to other regions of 100 to 500,000 people. And that tells us whether or not we're getting closer to top 25. This visual is not reflective of what's online. The center circle is actually yellow now, which means we're in the top 50. Everything that around this top 25. So when you look at those different themes, as Dr. Love, as you talked about, education, economy, diversity, equity, right? These are all measures that are, and then the outer ring, or those are themes, and then the outer rings is 90 indicators that feeds into the theme. So that's how we're measuring our progress. So the simplest way I describe it is we're trying to move what's in red to orange, and what's in orange, move that to yellow, and what's in yellow, move it to green.
All right, I have some additional questions here if you're ready for them.
I am.
Yes, okay. In terms of your personal growth, what are you working on now?
Ooh.
Can't hear your question.
Tough crowd. Okay, in terms of your personal growth, what are you working on now?
There you go.
Well, what am I working on? I am working on, well, if you could see, I've got a whole lot of books behind me and over here. I really enjoy reading. One of the books that I'm reading right now is actually by Seth Godin called The Practice. And it's something I picked up because as I was listening to his podcast, it's challenging me. I think as I said a few minutes ago, about what does it mean to show up, and what does it mean to be present? And each and every one of us has something inside of us that's unique to us and that the rest of the world needs. And so what this book is challenging me on is, how am I showing up? Am I constant? And what are the fears, or what are the challenges or frustrations that may be preventing me from showing up in full? And then what I like about the book too, and I'm actually putting this practice in daily. So part of my personal growth, I write everything down. So every day, I say, what do I need to ship? So that's kind of core to the book. What do I need to ship? That if I don't ship this today, nothing happens. Right. And that all feeds into our mission. So the vision, our mission, our strategies, our tactics. And so so that's what I'm really trying to get at much better at. Is being intentional about my time and saying, what am I shipping? And then as a result, all these other things that I don't need to ship, I'm not focusing on for that day or for that week. So I'm really working on that. And because I know it's for me personally, and it's also for my team. So, good question. Wow, I love this group.
I have some more questions. So this one says, leaders also make mistakes. How do you handle the situation, and what did it teach you? Life lessons. Here we go.
Yeah, leaders don't make mistakes. No. Yeah. Oh, yes, we make them all the time. For me, what I've learned is that I'm actually making mistakes more than I realize it. Actually, this whole philosophy of what am I shipping has forced me to see where I'm tripping myself up, or where I'm causing more backlog, or not hearing a particular stakeholder or community partner in the way that they're trying to advance a project. So I would say for me, one of the mistakes that I made, I would say with one that's up top, is the hardest part of leading. The easiest part of leading, in my opinion, is hiring. The hardest part of leadership is firing. If you can't fire someone, you really can't be in that role. And you're not in the role to just fire people, but the firing is really because it's someone that you realize isn't helping to advance the mission, and it's actually contributing to your cultural decline. And one mistake that I made is I have held on to individuals longer than I should have, out of the desire to really see them progress in their role and to course correct. And what I've discovered as a leader is I actually prevented them from growing. And so because they discovered is that they were in the wrong seat on the bus. If you're familiar with that philosophy, are you on the right bus? And then if you are on the right bus, are you in the right seat? And so the mistakes that I am learning from over the last 5 years is ensuring that not only do we have the right people on the bus, but are they in the right seat? And if they're not in the right seat, but they are on the right bus, let's make some shifts. But if they're not on the right bus, no matter how much shifting you do, they're not on the right bus. And I've actually seen some folks that we've parted ways mutually that are succeeding where they're at now. And I go,
That's it. Yes.
And it affected the culture of the team too. And another thing I'm learning too is when you get in the lead spot, you don't always get told everything. And because of just the dynamics of leadership and being an employee team, but realizing that affects you, that affects your teammates. And so as you step into leadership, constantly being in tune with culture and knowing that sometimes the hardest thing is actually the best for everybody, and for you as a person and you as a team and for that individual as well.
Very good.
I just gave you the raw.
Yeah, he did. Here's a question now. Is there a neighborhood outside of Rockford that you feel could use an organization like Transform Rockford?
Yes.
Any one of the top 10, right?
Yeah. Particularly in the United States, we have more distressed communities now more than ever. There's a map that I could show you that would be very alarming to many of you. We have pockets of prosperity and vast open space, I call it, of distress. Communities that are either stagnating or declining. And so I actually feel like there's going to be a need for more Transform Rockfords going forward, more than ever, because community change can't happen by one individual or one organization. It has to be multiple sectors. It has to be public, private, nonprofit, faith. It has to be so many people engaged. And I think because of the amount of distress, that's the inequality across our country, I don't see how communities, cities, and regions can operate without something like a Transform Rockford in the future.
Very good. Here's a question. What other organizations?
Lost your sound, Dr. K.
What other organizations or cities are you competing with? And I know that you're a private foundation, so I'm not sure if it's competing with the funding or what. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, well, in terms of communities that we are in, I guess you would say are competitors, they range from, so they're all regions between 100 and 500,000 people. So every region has a boundary area. So we're 2 counties, Winnebago and Boone, and so we're roughly 330,000 people. And so we're competing against communities like regions from Fort Wayne, Indiana, Lexington, Kentucky, Madison, Wisconsin, Napa, California is actually one of our peer communities. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, right? So not the large cities like Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, right? But now that you're getting into the mid-tier regions, that's where those are our competitors.
2 more questions. Is there anything you'd like to do or act on, just stopping yourself for some reason?
Wow.
I told you, a tough crowd.
I think it's the constant, what I said earlier about the practice. What am I shipping today? It's the being bold, and not leading from a place of humility. Sometimes I've gotten tripped up on that. Like I want to lead from a place of humility, but not to confuse that with confidence and boldness, right? Because there's some tough issues. We have significant challenges. So even though we're making a lot of progress here, we still have significant challenges. And so sometimes that requires some really brutal, crucial conversations. And sometimes and that's taxing. And so that's where, just mentally, this week, honestly, I just came out of a day where I'm very exhausted. From this week, I am very, very exhausted from the community dynamics and conversations, and so I could easily fall into the mode of I don't know that I can show up, but I'm like, nope, I got to show up.
Now, what's the process? You're talking about what I am shipping today, but I'd like to know what happens. Do you have particular milestones or anchors before you get to that place where you're actually shipping out this process?
Yeah. My personal system. My personal system is tied into our organizational system as well. So we actually use a dashboard that has all of our activities and our tactical plans, our metrics, and then I look and say, okay, what do I need to be doing to for uh, for this week, for this month, for this quarter, 6 months out. So I'm already looking into 2022 on things, but then I'm also then backing out to what needs to get out this quarter. And then that affects what then goes into this, this book, on a daily entry. You'll see um, like today's list was a little shorter, but this is what I say, this is what I have to ship today in order to keep things moving. So it's tied in. And then my calendar system is also linked too, because I have to really manage my time. And so, yeah, I look at my calendar daily throughout the week. On the weekends, I have a period where I look at what's ahead, and then I look at what the top priorities are that need to get shipped out, and then day by day, making that happen.
It's part of your strategic plan. Can you hear me this time? Okay, good. Part
Yes.
of your strategic plan. I mean, when you say ship out, that was a peculiar vernacular for me. So I was just wondering if there were other vernacular that you used along with it.
Yeah, it's really it's what it needs to get done. What are the
Okay.
what are the activities? So when I know, so right now, as a tangible example is, um, let's say on the communication side, I have a 2020 annual report that is, we're doing a video experience, and that needs to get released next week. So that's getting released next week. Then we also have the update to that community scorecard that's going to be released March 10th. And then we have major updates on our innovation ecosystem that's going to be released March 24th, right? So I'm looking at the quarter of all these things these targets that we've set, because the release of the community scorecard helps all stakeholders to know where are we. And then that also tells us, well, where do we need to course correct? And course correct is basically, we're not doing well here. It's red and orange. How do we get to yellow? So if I don't have that target, and I'm looking at my activities today, right? So the shipping piece is, I need to schedule our communications campaign with our communications agency, and I need to have our program manager and my executive assistant a part of that meeting. And that, because that's the first stage, right? So that's the whole, like, what I mean by shipping, like, that's what I got to ship today, is getting that scheduled. And then maybe next week it's uh, at staff team meeting, what do we need to do to get prepared for a successful conversation with our communications agency? And then, that's how we
Part of your
move towards that.
deliverables, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I actually have three more questions here to ask you. All right. Now, who are the key city leaders that are engaged with you in the project?
Well, we have a mix of civic leaders. So our board, our steering committee, is made up of nonprofit and business leaders, and their range in size and company. So one person is a senior vice president of a company that's 1,500 employees, and then you have someone who has a small business of 5, and then you have civic leaders, the city of Rockford mayor, the county chairman, school district superintendent and his team, right? Mostly involved on particular projects that we're working on. So it's a wide mix um, of leaders.
Now, can you name some role model communities?
Mm. I'd say right now, when I benchmark ourselves against other places, Provo, Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah,
Hmm.
um, Boise, Idaho, Madison, Wisconsin, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Similar population. problems. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. These are places. So when you look at the fastest growing regions today in the United States, they were doing the same kind of work that Rockford is doing now. So now we're what, 6, 7 years in. So when you see communities that are like fast growing top communities to live to, I can guarantee you that 20 years ago, they were in a spot of how do we grow? So Utah is a great example. They actually have an initiative there called Envision Utah, which is similar to like a Transform Rockford, but it's statewide. And so 1997, they were in a place where there were more people leaving the state of Utah than moving there. So does that sound familiar for those of us in Illinois?
Yes. Rain drain.
Yeah. And so when the state of Utah got serious about it, right now, fast forward 20 years later, they have 3 regions in their state that are the fastest growing in the entire country.
Mm.
So it's possible.
It is possible. And then finally, the last question in chat. Using the empowering and release style of leadership, how do you deal with conflict in any form?
Ooh. That's part 2. That's part 2. Well, usually what I always try to do is I always believe in one-to-one conversations, because in asking questions, and I'm always in a help me to understand mode. We actually have a process that I use. It's called 440. So 4 goals every 40 days. And I've learned that around 40 days is when you need to have conversations, because we're doing, and then it's easy to get drift off course, or there's some conflict that's emerged. So just this week, with one of my staff members, we laughed today. We're like, we've been on the phone and Zoom more than we have this week than ever, because we're dealing with a lot of conflict, not with each other, but with some members of her team that she's leading. And so we're working through that, and then you can start to see that we're getting triangulated and miscommunication. And so it's just having the conversation. What is going on here? What do you sense? Is this, and always asking the question, well, am I contributing to this? And if so, right, or, oh no, I have to pick up the phone, or I need to send that email, or whatever the meaning of communication is, we need to have a conversation on this, because this is affecting the team dynamics and it's affecting our progress. And those are conversations that are difficult, but gotta have them.
Have to have them. Oh my goodness. Well, I have one final question well, not even a question. Is 2 minutes of wisdom that you'd like to impart on these students? What would you say? 2 minutes.
I'd say have fun. And this is what, and by this I mean, in leadership is fun. It can be fun. It's taxing, it's draining, but if you have a core, you have a compass, and you show up to that, you constantly look at your compass, what your drive is, your values and beliefs, your purpose, your personal mission, you will have so much fun at this. I can honestly say that as difficult as the days are in leadership, I'm having more fun than I have had before, because of the opportunity and responsibility to empower others to do what they love to do. Like that joy to have team members who want to be a part of your team and are willing to take on the tough stuff. That honestly is why I show up every day. And so I just would encourage you, as you're on your leadership journey, to the intersection of your creativity and your wiring and your values, purpose, and belief, your compass, and you find that right fit, have fun. You're going to have fun because you're going to make a difference. And I think that would be the last part too, is have that always at the outset about making a difference, that your contribution will make a difference, but you got to show up and you got to give it away. And when you give it away, you will be unbelievably rewarded with things coming back to you to then pour it out again.
right.
So
Well
have
said.
fun, enjoy, and when someone knocks you down, when an issue knocks you down, when you feel like you're not being validated by people around you, you remind yourself, wait a minute, no, I got a whole lot here that I can ship.
Well, David, I want to thank you for joining us in the Friday night chat room. It's been a lot of fun. And the questions that were asked, I'm very, very proud of my students for asking these questions, because we've been together all day in residency and they showed up tonight. And so imparting your wisdom is so important, because that's a crucial element of why we lead and why we are all trying to pour back in our desired community. So thank you so much for everything that you shared with us tonight. And for my students tomorrow, I will see you at 9 a.m. via Zoom. And for everyone else, have a great evening.